How's it going, you guys? So in this video, I'm going to be discussing the scientific basis behind this syndrome that people call adrenal fatigue. So at a baseline, adrenal fatigue has become this trendy label that everybody kind of slaps on a complex of symptoms surrounding the stress response. It's become very trendy to just like when someone's experiencing, fatigue, low sleep quality, and all these other symptoms, they just kind of like slap this label of adrenal fatigue on them. And then a lot of people, especially some of my subscribers, they'll go on this wild goose chase of watching all these videos on how to cure adrenal fatigue and like the best herbs for adrenal fatigue. And you go to the grocery store, you go to like a supplement store, and you'll find all of these different like supplements specifically for adrenal support. When in reality, the way that this whole entire thing actually works, if you actually have the closest thing that resembles actual adrenal fatigue, none of these herbs are actually going to help you. They're completely missing the point. Although some of them actually can help support you, yes, but I guarantee you most of those supplements that claim to support the adrenal glands, they're barking up the wrong tree. So let me explain what actually causes what most people call adrenal fatigue. And let me also start by saying, I've said in many videos, and I'll say it again, 9 times out of 10, a lot of the people that are consulting with me or asking me questions about adrenal fatigue don't actually have clinical adrenal fatigue, okay? A lot of these people, they're just missing out on some of the basic principles required for a healthy lifestyle. So, and I have many other videos on this, and yeah, so I'll maybe make more videos for you guys in the future on that. But let's just get to the topic here. So, the scientific model behind adrenal fatigue, okay? So, what you guys are actually experiencing is inadequate production of dopamine, inadequate production of noradrenaline, and inadequate production of cortisol later on down the line, okay? So the symptoms most people will feel is what we'll start with. You'll feel fatigue, you'll have problems sleeping, you'll have trouble getting up in the morning, you'll feel unmotivated, you'll feel lethargic, you'll have an overall complete, like a feeling like you have way too much stress that you cannot tolerate anymore. The amount of stress you experience in your life is no longer tolerable. You have an inadequate ability to handle stress, okay? So these feelings were all caused by an inadequate supply of dopamine, noradrenaline, and cortisol. You don't have enough cortisol anymore. You don't have enough noradrenaline. Probably don't have enough adrenaline either, and don't have enough dopamine. In order and all of these are not bad. People think adrenaline is bad. They think cortisol is bad because it's a stress hormone. It's a hormone that actually is released to help your body handle stress. Okay, and so let me explain how this works. So it starts off with cholesterol. Cholesterol then turns into pregnenolone. Pregnenolone can then be converted either into progesterone and then cortisol, or it can be converted into DHEA and then estrogen and testosterone. So there's 2 different branches it can go down. If the cholesterol and then pregnenolone gets converted into the testosterone and the estrogen and whatnot, then you're going to be producing more beneficial hormones in a beneficial balance that kind of like is a sustainable cycle over time. More testosterone means likely better sleep, better recovery from stress, which means continuation of replenishing cholesterol into pregnenolone into more testosterone. So that's a self-sustaining cycle that promotes recovery from stress. Now, if on the other hand, you're, always on the go, you have like, multiple different jobs that you're juggling, you have a family, and you have maybe like a very stressful exercise routine, and all these other things, what can happen is most of your cholesterol and pregnenolone gets converted mostly into cortisol, okay? And so it goes down this other pathway. And what happens is more pregnenolone, which is the building blocks for testosterone in that other pathway, gets converted into progesterone and cortisol over time. And so all of the building blocks your body needs to produce healthy hormonal balance, testosterone and everything, gets converted into cortisol instead. And so that's the mechanism in which cortisol can lower testosterone and lower your beneficial hormones. Okay? So your body is taking all that cholesterol and pregnenolone and converting it into cortisol. And also at the same time, cortisol is also an end product of phenylalanine, tyrosine, and all the building blocks of dopamine and noradrenaline. So you have to understand that the building blocks that make dopamine, which makes you feel motivated, makes you feel happy, euphoric, makes you chase good things in life, those building blocks that make dopamine also are required to make adrenaline and to make cortisol. So, and the building blocks to make testosterone are the building blocks to make cortisol. So this is what we have to understand, and this is the primary mechanism in how so-called adrenal fatigue is created. Is, first of all, people who don't eat enough protein, they don't eat enough cholesterol, and they don't eat enough of the cofactor vitamins and minerals, like vitamin C, magnesium, vitamin D, calcium. If they don't eat enough of these nourishing building blocks of nutrients to create these neurotransmitters and these hormones, then at a baseline, you're already going to be having inadequate production of all these nutrients. And this is a lot of times why when you start to nourish yourself, sometimes you'll go through a period of recovery where you sleep way better, but you're always sleeping for a couple months. But then you feel way energized a couple months down the road. And this is also why people who undereat calories and undereat protein and undereat fat, and people who go vegan generally, they experience all these weird symptoms of like feeling like having nervous system disorders, anxiety, depression, and all these other problems. And it's due to probably inadequate production of pregnenolone and cortisol and things because they don't eat enough cholesterol, they don't eat enough of the amino acids, depending on the composition of the plant foods they eat. And I can go on and on. So anyway, here's the thing. First of all, if you are not eating adequate amounts of the nutrients required to produce the dopamine and the testosterone and the adrenaline and cortisol, then obviously it doesn't matter how stressed you are, because your body's not going to be able to produce enough hormones and neurotransmitters to deal with that stress. But let's say that you are somebody who eats 1 gram of protein per pound of lean mass. So you're getting your amino acid precursors. And you are eating enough vitamin C and magnesium and other things to produce enough dopamine and neurotransmitters to deal with that stress. And let's say you are eating enough cholesterol, which your body does produce a certain amount of cholesterol on its own. So let's say you are eating enough of these building blocks. Okay? Well, what happens if you are living an extremely stressful lifestyle where every single day you're not sleeping enough, you are, waking up like prematurely to an alarm at after 4 hours of sleep, and you don't have enough time to eat breakfast, and you go straight up into traffic, battling traffic to get to work, and then you go to work late, and you have all these like stressful coworkers and stressful customers and things you have to deal with during the day, and then like you hardly have enough time to eat or whatever. Even if you are eating enough nutrients, your whole day is just stress. So basically what happens is your body's in overdrive trying to produce enough cortisol and adrenaline from the pregnenolone and the cholesterol that you get from your diet, and producing adrenaline and cortisol from the dopamine cascade of amino acids that you get from your diet. And so all of your dopamine precursors are being used to produce adrenaline and cortisol, and all of your testosterone precursors are being used to create cortisol. So you're using up all your dopamine. You're using up all your noradrenaline, which is a neurotransmitter part of the dopamine cascade that's required for focus and for in the moment type of like reactions and things, for feeling sharp and your memory and things. All of these beneficial compounds can't be created anymore because you're using it up for cortisol. And this is the beginning stages of what people call adrenal fatigue. Most people experience this simply because they're not eating enough protein, they're not eating enough cholesterol, they're not taking in enough vitamin C and magnesium. Okay? And most people, they don't have good sleep hygiene. And their sleep problems and their low energy during the day has nothing to do with all of this. It has more to do with inadequate sleep hygiene, which I have specific videos on. Now, over time, what can happen, and this is where we get into the actual clinical adrenal fatigue that most closely fits that diagnosis. After a while, what happens is, essentially, you have so much stress going on that the building blocks for cortisol are no longer adequate in supply to fulfill that cortisol and stress demand. So the demand for cholesterol and amino acids is so high because you got all this stress. But you got so much freaking stress that you no longer have enough of the nutrients required to build that. Your body can't pump out enough cortisol to deal with it anymore. So your body uses all of its cortisol, all of its adrenaline, all of its dopamine, all of that to try to deal with all that stress, and it can no longer handle that stress load anymore. And now you have a low cortisol condition. You have low cortisol, low adrenaline, and you definitely don't have any of the dopamine or any of this other stuff. So what happens when you're low on cortisol? Now your whole entire sleep cycle and all these other things go down the shitter. Because what people don't understand is being able to fall asleep at a healthy time has more to do with what time you wake up in the morning and the light that you're exposed to in the morning, and it has less to do with forcing yourself to go to sleep at night. That's why if you ever try to force yourself to go to sleep at 10 p.m. every day, it's pretty much it's a losing deal. It never works that way. But if you regulate the time you wake up in the morning, if you wake up at 9 p.m. or 9 a.m. every morning, then your body will naturally fall asleep about 8 hours before then. And so, if you can't wake up in the morning, cortisol's one of the hormones that is primarily responsible for waking you up in the morning. So if you have a low cortisol condition, especially at the right times, like in the morning, now your body's not going to be able to wake up at first thing in the morning. And so, in that case, something like coffee, something like maca root mixed with coffee can help your body produce cortisol first thing in the morning. Of course, a lot of people think, oh no, that's going to contribute to adrenal fatigue, blah, blah, blah. Actually, it'll help your body release cortisol at the right time so that eventually you'll be able to get to sleep better by releasing cortisol first thing in the morning when it should be released, and then producing less cortisol before bed. So anyway, low cortisol is the endpoint manifestation of what people call adrenal fatigue. So how do you handle this situation? Okay, this is how. The main cause of adrenal fatigue, of the actual thing, and keep in mind, a lot of people think they have adrenal fatigue when in reality they just have inadequate nutrition, inadequate sleep hygiene. And technically, this is actually adrenal fatigue. But people, they go on all these like crazy ass like protocols. They take these dumbass herbs and supplements that actually have some application, like Siberian ginseng. It's a lot simpler than that. How do you overcome this freaking problem? Well, let's see, what's the cause? Inadequate supply of building blocks to produce stress hormones required for dealing with stress. That's the first thing. The second thing is too much stress that creates a demand for these building blocks. Okay? Also a low tolerance to stress. People think, oh, I need to stop exercising because it just like stresses my body out. Wrong! What you need is you need to exercise more, but you need shorter, more intense bouts of exercise. So the science actually shows high intensity exercise, like maximum effort weightlifting, sprinting intervals, and high intensity interval training. What it actually does is it allows your body to produce more adrenaline per stimulus, and it helps your body to adapt to tolerate more adrenaline at once, to the point where your body can actually remove adrenaline from the circulation faster. So marathon running and endurance training is not good. It's completely catabolic, and it's the opposite of what you need for adrenal fatigue situations. But what you need is more frequent bouts of high intensity exercise for shorter amounts of time. That's the first thing, okay? The second thing that you need is more amino acids to produce more dopamine and more adrenaline and noradrenaline and things. You need more cholesterol in order to give your body the building blocks of cortisol and pregnenolone so that you can produce more testosterone, this other stuff. And then you need to also give your body the vitamin C, the magnesium. You should probably look for graphs on vitamin and mineral precursors that combine with phenylalanine, then tyrosine, and then thyroxine, thyroid hormones, and then dopamine and L-dopa, noradrenaline, adrenaline. Those are kind of like the dopamine precursor cascade. And you need to make sure you're consuming adequate amounts. I recommend supplementing with ascorbic acid. Eating probably more than 1 gram per pound of lean mass or ideal body weight worth of protein, preferably from animal protein, preferably from red meat, because it also contains things like carnitine, carnosine, creatine, and other things that give your body the building blocks of energy and things that it needs to deal with stress. It's probably why so many people experience such amazing recovery from adrenal fatigue and things when they eat more red meat in a red meat-based diet. And then another thing is probably getting adequate amounts of carbohydrates from fruit, because fruit contains vitamin C, potassium, magnesium, and all the building blocks that it needs, and the B vitamins, to create these neurotransmitters. And also, a lot of people experience greater energy and regulation of sleep patterns when they do a ketogenic diet, but that can be a very stressful thing to manage in and of itself because people don't get enough salt. And inadequate salt can also be a contributor towards this adrenal fatigue situation. On top of that, most people don't do keto properly. And on top of that, you do need cortisol in order to create ketone bodies and produce glucose from fatty acids in the ketogenic metabolism. So it might be a good idea to eat just an abundance of bananas, berries, and citrus fruits along with red meat, and probably some calf liver on the side. And then raw egg yolks, just egg yolks in general. It doesn't have to be raw. Anyway, that would be my dietary recommendation, just because it provides all the precursors and nothing you don't need. Anyway, so giving your body an adequate supply of these building blocks, and then reducing the demand for these building blocks. So, if you're under all this stress and you're feeling chronically tired, I notice the more training that I do, the more physical training combined with the higher workload and schedule I do. Since I'm a strength and conditioning coach and I also do health consultations on the side, I'm constantly outputting my energy. Like, I'm not doing a normal job like most people where they're behind a computer and it's mindless activity that they're used to. I have to constantly be talking to people, sharing information, answering questions, whether I'm doing health consultations via phone or Zoom or Skype, or if I'm like doing personal training and helping people, showing people exercises and stuff. I live a very physically active and mentally active lifestyle. And I notice I get really tired really fast, on top of training for powerlifting and for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so during that time, I have such a high demand of stress hormones, like for stress, for these amino acid precursors. First of all, I have to eat a high protein diet. It is no surprise that I felt like garbage back before I started eating enough amino acids. And now, the more protein I eat, the better I feel. And then adding fruit to my diet has made this process so much easier, as a matter of fact. You need to reduce that amount. I have to stop some of the training I'm doing. I have to stop some of the higher stress demand things that I was doing, even if they're things that used to bring me joy. And instead, spend more time on laying down in a fucking dark room where I could rest a little bit and allow my body. Basically, you gotta allow your body to use some of that cholesterol, pregnenolone, and those amino acids to create more dopamine, to create more testosterone, so that you can keep replenishing those body stores of recovery so you can deal with the stress later. So, essentially, adrenal fatigue is the inadequate production of cortisol, the inadequate production of dopamine, the inadequate production of adrenaline. It is a problem of too little building blocks of stress hormones. You have inadequate production of stress hormones, inadequate production of neurotransmitters, and you have too much stress that's stealing all of those neurotransmitters to produce hormones and neurotransmitters that are meant to deal with that stress. And that in and of itself will make you feel like shit because you can't produce enough dopamine, can't produce enough testosterone. Then, after a long time of this inadequate nourishment and too much stress that's stealing all the nourishment, what happens is now your body can't even produce stress hormones. And that low cortisol, low adrenaline is what you feel when you can't sleep, when you feel lethargic, you feel andohenia, okay? You feel like you're out of your body and shit, okay? Depersonalization. This is a complete crash of the endocrine and neurotransmitter system, of the nervous system. And the simple fix is to eat way more protein, eat more cholesterol, and eat more vitamin C, vitamin B1, thiamine, B6, B12, magnesium, calcium, vitamin D, which you should supplement with, and then reduce the amount of stress, okay? And for 9 times out of 10, most people, the reason why they can't sleep, the reason why they feel like garbage, it has nothing to do with their stress load, okay? Most people just don't eat enough protein, okay? Especially modern Americans. There's all this talk about them eating too much meat. They're not eating enough. They're eating too much refined carbs and polyunsaturated fats and not enough fruits and meat. And the clients that I work with, the ones who undereat protein are the ones that have the most trouble dealing with a busy life. I have a client that I just saw today. He has 3 jobs. He has a family he's supporting. He's only 21 years old, and he's able to make strength gains and muscle gains while losing body fat at the same time. And he doesn't sleep very much, and he's doing just fine. But the main difference between him and some of my other clients is that he's eating enough protein. He's doing everything he can to stuff in that protein and the nourishment. Whereas I have other clients that are like insisting on doing caloric deficits, they're under eating protein, and they're wondering why they feel like garbage and they get injured and stuff. And I keep telling them, you need more protein, you need more nutrients, and they don't feel hungry. No freaking duh, you don't feel hungry. Your hormones are done. That's why you're not hungry. And I care so much about them. I try so hard to get them to eat more nourishment, more protein and shit, but they're crashing down to the ground. And it's 100% a choice. You must eat enough protein. You must eat enough salt, enough cholesterol, enough vitamin C, enough of these B vitamins. Okay? You've got to stop being scared of eating. You've got to stop being stubborn. Okay, you guys? Please stop looking at all this bullshit on the internet. All these freaking gurus who want to sell you supplements. Fucking Dr. Berg, Christopher Walker, and all these people. Okay? But I will say, things like reishi mushroom, okay? One of the main reasons why they help your body to recover over time, they don't solve the problem, but they do help by reducing the amount of the demand for cortisol, because they keep that cortisol demand low. They blunt your body's desire for cortisol production, and they help to tip the hormone production more towards testosterone and more towards dopamine production. At first, you'll feel more tired because it's lowering the amount of cortisol you need, but eventually it allows you to recover. But the key is, if you're not eating enough protein and all the other nutrients, none of that shit's going to matter. Okay? You need the nutrients! Alright guys, I'm going to stop now because I could rant forever, because it's a huge problem that I see with everybody. One more thing that I got to mention is this is also the reason why when you take isolated dopamine precursors, when you take phenylalanine, you take tyrosine, okay? This is why these things make such a huge difference for people, even though that you get them from food. It's because most people who have these problems, people who are looking for things like tyrosine and nootropics and shit, the whole reason why you have low energy in the first place is because you need specifically more tyrosine and more dopamine precursors. It's because all your dopamine precursors are being used up by the stress response. So when you start to supplement with phenylalanine, you start to supplement with tyrosine, even things like theanine and mucuna, it's entirely because you're burning up all your freaking amino acids, all the tyrosine you get from your diet, in the stress response. So you supplement them in isolated forms, your body's able to soak them all up at once, and now you have enough of these amino acids for you to actually produce dopamine now, rather than just using it all in cortisol and adrenaline. So yeah, that's why I think it's a great idea to supplement with phenylalanine and things that don't bypass the like tyrosine hydroxylase or whatever, the rate limiting enzyme. It's not a good idea. Like, the farther you go along the dopamine chain to like L-DOPA, the less of the rate limiting enzyme and the more of a tendency for tolerance. Anyway, leave your question and comments down below. If you watch this entire video, congratulations. You have the attention span of a healthy human, unlike most people. Leave your question and comments down below. Let me know if you watched the whole video so I can congratulate you on your healthy attention span. Okay, you've not been hijacked by the tech gurus who are trying to like fuck up the human attention span for profit. Alright, love you guys. Subscribe. Talk to you guys next time.